All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Dave, me, and Nick here, bringing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Looking at this coaching staff, Dave Clausen, through 8 seasons, 51 and 48 overall record. Warren Ruggiero, he's been with Clausen since 2009. He's the offensive play caller. And Brad Lambert, this is his first year at the Demon Deacons. He actually coached here quite a while ago. From 2001 to 2010, he was a coach here at Wake Forest. Spent 7 years after that at Charlotte. Was with Purdue the last 2 years. Then Marshall in between that. So a handful of stops last few years, but he makes his return to the Demon Deacons, who won their first Atlantic Crown since 2006 last year. Looking at this offense, Nick, this is a phenomenal unit. 41 points per game was fourth in college football. They also get 9 starters back, so you would expect them to improve upon that, but it's hard to get much better when you're that good. Sam Hartman, though, he shattered the school record for yards and touchdowns in a single season, 4,200 plus yards, 38 scores. Also ran for another 363 and 11 scores. So he was a stat sheet stuffer last year under center. I think it was his 5th year, I believe. He's been around a long time. He's also the career TD leader. He's got great command and understanding of the offense. Not the biggest arm, but some nice velocity. Of course, he understands the principle so well. One of the biggest concerns, though, was 14 picks last year, 29 picks in 36 career games. That's not something I like. But plenty of experience, and he should continue to grow. I think this will be his best season ever.
Yeah, I like Sam Hartman a lot. I think he's a super talented quarterback. I do love how he has that, running option as well. He can carry the ball and get touchdowns for you if you need that on the ground. Had a decent year last year, 11 touchdowns on the ground, 3.1 yards per carry for Hartman. Super talented in that regard. I love his arm strength. I really like what he can do. He's a full sort of quarterback for me. I do worry about the mistakes, though. That's the one thing I've had to knock Hartman. It would be the mistakes and the completion percentage, only 58.9% last year, and the 14 interceptions. Obviously, probably needs to cut down on those this year, but this offense across the board is returning so many stars. The depth chart is so deep. I think this offense will be dynamite again this year, and they could easily put up more than 4,000 yards. Hartman can at least.
When it comes to Hartman, you got to take the bad with the good, because they like to air it out a lot. They like to take risks, and 14 picks isn't that bad if you're scoring that many points per game. It's not like it's costing them opportunities, even though it certainly does. But from a stat sheet standpoint, I think they're doing all right. Look at this group of weapons, though. Roberson departs. This is a great group of wide receivers. A.T. Perry, 71 receptions, just shy of 1,300 yards last year, 15 touchdowns, averaged almost 19 yards per catch, Nick. This guy was such a great impact player for them. Makes a big play every time he catches the ball, it seems. 6'5", 206. Wins at the top of his routes with good movement. Good awareness as well. Allows him to win across the middle of the field. Love A.T. Perry. Taylor Morton, Hunter Renfrow type of guy with his savviness. Of course, he's not as good as Renfrow. I don't think anybody is, but 5'10", 176. Has that slippery ability. 43 receptions for 621 yards and 5 touchdowns. And Donovan Green, he had 29 receptions for 582 yards in 2020. Didn't play this past season, but he averaged over 20 yards per catch 2 years ago. They're glad to have him back. And then Keyshawn Smith, as a freshman last year, he's the 4th leading pass catcher, 400-plus yards and 3 scores of his own. Pretty nice receiving corps here for Sam Hartman to work with. And if they stay healthy, they're going to put up numbers.
This is a solid receiving core. I love the production these guys have. Super talented top to bottom. Keyshawn Williams, super talented guy. 15 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns for him last year. And A.T. Perry, he lit up the scoreboard last year. 15 total touchdowns, 18.2 yards per grab for him. Really talented wide receiving core. When you have a quarterback like Hartman throwing to them, it's a recipe for success for sure.
I'm kind of shocked the running game wasn't more efficient. 3.9 yards is a pretty solid yard per carry number, but 160 yards per game, that's also pretty solid the way this offense operates. But it just didn't seem that strong considering they had 3 500-plus yard rushers, and Hartman was not far behind them at all. Christian Beal-Smith, he departs for South Carolina, but Justice Ellison's back, 541 and 7 scores last year. Christian Turner, the former Michigan transfer, 506 and 5 touchdowns of his own. 4 players had 100-plus carries last year. The offense had the 2nd most plays in college football, so it gave everyone a chance to get touches. And for the most part, I'd say most of these guys made an impact.
Yeah, solid running back core. They don't put up a whole lot of numbers per game, but I think they have a decent core that they return. I do like what they have here. I think Turner is a solid guy as a backup. 500 yards last year on the ground, 4.4 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns for Turner. I think he's a solid guy. Then Ellison, also decent as well, 541 yards last year, 7 touchdowns for him. Good balanced attack. I don't see them relying on the run this year a whole lot. I think they'll continue to air it out, but they do have it as a good option. I think these guys provide great depth.
Very respectable balance here for Wake Forest. Offensive line returns 4 starters. They do lose Zach Tom, who's an NFL prospect. Javontre Nash, though, he missed last year. He replaces him, and he has plenty of experience, so I think they're all right there. Pretty thin in the spring, though. They're able to mix and match, which will help with depth come this fall. The unit wasn't all that sturdy in pass protection, though. They got dominated by the Clemson defensive line in that game. Absolutely clobbered by the nation's top defensive line, in my opinion, coming into the year. Getting 4 starters back, and then Nash, a guy who has plenty of experience. They pretty much have 5 starters back here on the O-line. I expect big things out of them, but they certainly got to be better because last year wasn't exactly great despite, the heroics they had all together.
Right, the offensive line definitely lacked some, fighting competitism at some points last year. I'd like to see a little bit more out of this offensive line. I think Nash is solid sliding in at right tackle. I like his leadership, redshirt senior, a lot of experience. This offensive line is very experienced. It does lack depth. They were playing around with the depth during the spring ball, but I think they have serious potential to kind of grow and develop this offensive line a little bit.
The Wake Forest Demon Deacon defense gets 6 starters back, and they certainly progressed, especially on the D-line this past year, but they're still 111 versus the run, and that was really the area on this defense that really caused them to lose games. They got into the backfield for 97 tackles for loss. The edge presence was really good, but the interior D-line and positioning from the linebackers overall was pretty weak. Rondell Bothroyd, 16.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. He was a consistent force for them. Rasheen Davis, 8 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. Solidify an impressive edge duo here. While Ja'Cory Johns was pretty good as well, he provided some good depth. I like Deion Burgon, a vet that made some good plays for them. They pick up Kobe Turner from Richmond. Think this run defense will certainly take some strides this year. I'm not overly hopeful, though, especially when they lose Luke Masterson. In depth, that linebacker is a big concern. Chase Jones, he had 47 tackles. He's back. And then Ryan Smenda, he's a leader, 83 tackles of his own. I don't know how to feel about this run defense, Nick, because I think they'll get better, but I'm not really counting on it.
I'm not 100% sold in this run defense as well. I think Smenda's a solid guy, 83 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss for the linebacker. Not the worst run defense I've ever seen in the world. I think it's solid considering, in the conference. I think they'll have a decent success here. I think Burgon, I like his experience, 5.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks last year, plus 2 pass breakups. They are replacing a guy in Masterson who did lead the team in tackles and also had 13 tackles for loss. So it's got to find that production somewhere else. But Bothroyd, solid guy, 16.5 tackles, 8 sacks. Very strong numbers for him. I'd like to see him step up a little bit more this year, though.
Wake Forest has always seemed to have talented players in the secondary, a ball hawking group, always. At the top of the ACC in interceptions last couple of seasons. That's one thing about them. They had 15 of them last year, ranked 49th against the pass, so they certainly progressed in this area, too. They still allowed over 3K yards. The 58% opponent completion rate was 5th in the conference, so that was a good mark. But they still had their moments of disappointment. I think they're in for their best season yet, though. Despite losing to Sir Taylor, Kalen Carlson get 2 picks, 7 pass breakups in 9 games. One of the best corners in the conference when healthy. Nick Anderson, over 100 career tackles through 2 years. I like him at safety. Then Kobe Davis. He was great in the month of September. Those were the only 4 games he played, and then he got hurt. I think this trio is going to do big wonders here for Dave Clawson's group. Malik Mustafa, he has impressive physical traits as well. So I really like what they have here in the secondary. Can they get better, though? I think they should, considering how good the pass rush will be. Very excited for this unit, really.
Yeah, I like this unit a lot. I think Nick Anderson's a young player who's got some good experience so far. 44 tackles for him last year, interception to boot as well. I like to see him continue to develop over time. I like his potential a whole lot. I think the secondary is solid. They're going to go after the ball. They're going to get some interceptions. They're going to be tough to throw on. Carson's a solid guy, 2 picks last year. He also had 30 yards on returns and 7 pass breakups for Carson. I'd like to see him continue to get some interceptions this year.
We have the schedule preview and prediction. I really like this team, Nick. The run defense will have to prove itself, and that's the biggest concern with them. But this could be a playoff team, I think, if they can get things figured out in the trenches on both sides, really. Talented secondary, we just talked about, a great offense. Some tough matchups, though. I originally had them losing to North Carolina when I did their preview, but I'm going to switch that to a win being at home. I think that's a tough matchup for their pass catchers, though. Storm Duck and Tony Grimes, talented secondary. I think that offense will have it figured out come November, so that's going to be a very tough matchup. But I think they'll win it being at home versus Clemson. That's a loss. Pretty self-explanatory there. I think at Florida State, at Louisville, at NC State, these are all really good football teams. Well, NC State's a really good football team. Louisville will. Florida State kind of iffy on, but their running attack, I think that they're really going to shred Wake Forest on the ground there October 1st. Those are all winnable games, though. This team, I have them going 8-4, but they could definitely hit double figures once again. I wouldn't be shocked one bit.
I think 10-2 is very achievable for this team. I think they can flip the games against Louisville and Florida State that you picked them losing. I could easily see them at 10-2. The schedule is not too hard, especially out of conference. I mean, at Vanderbilt's nothing really crazy at all. VMI, Liberty. These are some pretty easy games out of conference. Army as well. I like this schedule. I think this team has built themselves. They have a great offense. I expect them to score a ton of points this year, and they can find themselves putting teams behind very early that could struggle to keep up. I think 10-2 is an absolutely achievable thing for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And I really do like this team top to bottom. I think I do worry about the defensive line a little bit, but I think that they have enough pieces outside of that to shine. For me, I'm going to go 10-2 for the record prediction.
Yeah, I like it. It's a pretty solid prediction. September 17th against Liberty, pretty respectable non-conference game. That could be a good team this year. Hugh Freeze has done good there, but they clearly do not have the personnel on defense to match up with an offense like that. So if they can blow them out of the water, that could be really good win for, it could be a good resume builder come late in the year. The Army game, that's a really good one too. I remember last year I picked nothing but Wake Forest offensive guys. in DraftKings because I knew they were going to shred that defense because they don't practice against an attack like this, and they absolutely shredded them. Wake Forest, though, they got annihilated on the ground, so Army stayed in that game. I think that's important to note because that's really the biggest focal point for this football team and this defense. So 8-4 for me, that might be a little disrespectful, but I think the losses make sense when you sit down and look at them. So I don't expect too much outrage because I definitely think they go 10-2, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Wake Forest compete for a crown and a potential playoff spot. So that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Nick, as always, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.